Over the last 5 years that we've been doing Historians at the Movies on Sunday nights, I've kept a list internally in my head about what film I'm dying to show most, to share with the audience, to talk about. And for the longest time, one film has reigned supreme, and that's 1987's Dirty Dancing with Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey. God, I love this movie. I've seen this movie so many times. You know, it comes out for revival every few years. Like every 5 years, they'll do another run in the theater. And I've seen it for like the last 15 years. I've seen this movie so many times. I just love everything about this movie. I watched it a little bit earlier today, right before we recorded this pod. I am so excited to talk to you about this because I just had the absolute best conversation with three amazing powerhouse historians, Leah Lagrone, Lauren MacIvor Thompson, and Lauren Lassabe Shepherd. We had the best talk today about Dirty Dancing. It's maybe one of the great hidden history films we've ever seen. It has so much to talk about labor and sexuality and gender and class and the 60s and the 80s. And God, it's an awesome movie. I think a lot of us love this film, and I am so excited for you guys to listen to this podcast. We had an absolute blast. Can't wait to share it with you here today. So without further ado, sit back and relax. Nobody's putting baby in a corner this time either. Dirty Dancing is next in Historians of the Movies podcast. Okay, well, hi everybody. How are you?
Hey.
Hi.
Oh, that was musical, except for L Mac went like two with two highs. So, all right. So for people joining in today, we have three returning Historians at the Movies podcast champions: Leah Lagrone, Lauren MacIvor Thompson, and Lauren Lassabe Shepherd. All of three of whom have decided on new nicknames for the duration of this podcast. Lauren Lassabe Shepherd is going to go by L Shep. We also have L Mac over here, and then also Leah. Guys, I am so excited. This is the number one film. Like, I have a list of like the movies to do on Sunday nights, and this is like the number one movie we've never done.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for this movie for at least 5 years.
I'm surprised that it hasn't been done yet.
I'm surprised it hasn't been available. How does Dirty Dancing in all of its glory not be available on Netflix or Amazon Prime or Disney Plus? Can you imagine it? Abortion movies brought to you by Disney Plus. Take that, Ron DeSantis.
Yes.
They never say the word. I mean, if you were a kid, you wouldn't know what was happening.
Oh my gosh, we have to talk about that because when I was a kid, I did not know what was happening.
I didn't either.
Do we just jump in? Okay, so we're doing Dirty Dancing. You guys have been on the pod before. I just want to, introduce yourselves real quick, who you are, what you do, and then let's jump in. Let's start. I'm going to go with reverse order here. Let's go L Shep.
Oh, hi. I'm Lauren Lassabe Shepherd. I am an instructor at the University of New Orleans and first-time Dirty Dancer watching, now film critic. I literally just finished watching this like 15 minutes before we started. It just ended. First viewing, and it was fantastic. I loved it.
Oh, first viewing. That's awesome.
That's why, Lauren had told me she had never seen it, so I thought it would be awesome to have someone who hadn't seen the film, in addition to people who were like, I've seen this movie at the theater like 5 times. All right. El Mac, who are you and what are you doing here? What are your Dirty Dancing credentials?
My Dirty Dancing credentials date back to 1987 when I won at my school fair the actual vinyl record of the soundtrack. So that was super awesome.
Stop.
And I'm an assistant professor of history and gender and women's studies at Kennesaw State University in Atlanta.
That's tough to beat. Good luck, Leah.
I'm Leah Lagrone. I'm assistant professor of history and public history director at Weber State.
And I am benevolent dictator and host Jason Herbert, who is not. I've taken dance lessons before, but we'll get into that in a bit. All right, let's just jump into this movie. Like typically, this podcast, as you guys know, have like Lauren Shepherd and I did a podcast where we didn't even talk about the movie for like 2 hours and then buried the podcast entirely. When we did,
You're not going to air that one, right?
No, Animal House. No, that like literally Lauren and I sat here going like an hour and a half in. Lauren was super tired and I was like delusional. We were like, this is awful, right? So
delete,
that's going to be like the great making of pod. Like we'll harvest like 3 sentences of that for like a commercial one day. But we're going to jump into Dirty Dancing because we've all seen this movie now. And I want to talk about this movie. Comes out in 1987. When's the first, Lauren Shepherd's already written this. What is your first time you ever saw this movie? Do you recall when you saw this movie?
I think I went to the theater, but I'm not 100% for certain. I remember getting the VHS, like don't laugh, VHS cassette of Dirty Dancing for Christmas with the soundtrack tapes because it was just my favorite. So I'm assuming, my memory fails, but I'm assuming that I had gone to the theater to see it. And then I got
your parents let you see Dirty Dancing in the theaters and you were 10 years old.
My parents did not. It was 1987. You didn't check up. I mean, they dropped us off at the skating rink. They dropped
Lauren, you were from Texas. You're going to go to hell for that. Or your parents are at the very least.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what they did. I mean, we got it. We always got a group. I watched Pretty Woman at our last podcast. I watched that in the theater where my mom dropped a whole bunch of us girls off at the theater and we just went in together.
I was like 10 years old and we watched Pretty Woman at a sleepover. And then like the mom came in and just fast forwarded like the
parts about capitalism. I get it.
Well, I mean, I think I probably had a similar experience with Dirty Dancing. It must have been probably like 1989, 1990 after it had like come out on VHS. And I am almost positive we watched it at a sleepover and probably, a lot of the really kind of politically serious scenes, like just like flew right over my head. Cause you're just watching these two pretty people fall in love and do beautiful dancing. So,
and Lauren Shepherd, how about you? When was the first time you saw this film?
Oh, I mean, I guess I started it 2 hours ago in 2023. But I mean, as a kid, like I remember I had a Grease themed birthday party when I was like 8 or 9 because I was obsessed with the movie Grease. And my mom actually did, my very Catholic, very strict mom actually did let me watch Grease. But like, all those references, like we were just talking about abortion, that goes straight over your head. I mean, you don't have any way of understanding that. And so I guess that's why she let me watch it. Must have been why parents in the 80s were like, yeah, kids, have fun. Yeah. Enjoy Dirty Dancing.
No, definitely. Right. And the abortion thing is such an important thing to talk about. And I want to get to it here in a minute because you're absolutely right. It completely flew over my head back in I was reading today. This was the #1 selling VHS in 1988. And because of the soundtrack, which we're definitely going to talk about later on. And I mean, this movie was just like, it did well at the theater and then just crushed at home. It just was everybody was watching this movie. Do you remember your first reactions? Now we're going to go historians at the sleepover. So, Leah, did you like this movie as a child?
Oh my gosh, I loved it. I loved every part of it. I mean, I was fully immersed in dance. I took dance since I was like 2 years old, 3 years old, all of them, tap, jazz, ballet, all through college. I took dance classes. And so, that was the big thing for me is like, this was the best dancing movie, like summer camp type dancing movie. At the same time, I was in YMCA summer camp, right? Because both of my parents had to work during the summer. And so my brother and I had to go to YMCA summer camp, which was out in the woods with very similar cabins that they had in the movie. And so I just thought like it was speaking to me, dance and cabins and camp and summer camp. And so it was, why it wasn't my life, it just, it did speak to me as part of my life.
Lauren Thompson, what do you think? Do you remember how you came to this? Like what your first thoughts
Yeah.
were?
So in addition to like winning the vinyl LP soundtrack, like right when it first came out, it like I said, it was probably 1987, 88. It was probably a few years later that I first saw it, like at a sleepover as a 10, 11 year old. But I also remember taking a trip with my family to the resort that it's in Virginia. I think they filmed a bunch of the, like, all the resort scenes at this.
Oh my God. I would kill for that.
And I think we were there, I think like right after they had wrapped the filming, and it was like already like the talk of, and my parents were not like tuned into pop culture type stuff. They didn't pick, I think we just like went for the weekend or whatever. And it just so happened that they had just finished filming the movie a few months before. And so all the staff was still talking about it. And so of course they had met Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey, and they had gotten to have, parts in the movie, like as staff. So that was like, I didn't really realize until later, like that was pretty cool. Like, but as like a 7-year-old, I was like, okay, whatever. But
no, oh my God.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about where we're going to do the very first Historians at the Movies like convention.
Yeah.
And I was like, either that place or the river, they did Deliverance on. I haven't quite figured out which one of the two that we'll do. I'm thinking probably Virginia.
Yeah. Mountain Lake. I think that's the resort name, Mountain Lake. I don't know if it still exists, but I was there.
Lauren, you got to see this movie as a grown up. You were the only one of us who got to come to this movie as an adult. What were your immediate thoughts 10 minutes ago? As you're coming in? Oh, did you really?
Too. Yeah.
What? Oh,
so the first,
all four of us have notes.
Right.
So.
Look, we can start wherever you want. I want to talk about Jewish summer camps, like post-war Jewish summer camps.
Gosh, yes.
The Catskills.
Yeah, like as a
that was a big part of
historical phenomenon.
Marvelous Miss Maisel too. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, for real?
Yeah. So Miss Maisel was my introduction to that as a thing. And then this past summer, right, there was a book about Jewish summer camps. Do y'all know what I'm talking about?
I think I remember.
Sandra Fox.
Yeah.
Yeah, is the author, The Jews of Summer. Yeah, just came out recently. Maybe it came out last year. But I remember seeing it advertised everywhere. Okay, came out February 2023. So yeah, about like post-war American Jewish summer camps. Yeah, so I mean, we can talk about summer camps. We can talk about Girl Scout camps. That was my involvement in that. Dance movies as a genre, like we could go back to Grease if y'all want to. We're talking about Save the Last Dance. The rich girl, poor guy, also a genre. Titanic comes to mind. The thrashing and thrusting, that was like, so watching it as an adult, what caught my attention is just like the aesthetics of the movie, because the scenes there's so much whiplash between like, okay, we're in a group scene and everybody's talking, and then baby kind of sneaks off to like the staff quarters, and she's walking down like at night, and then she like sneaks into people's rooms, or when she's not sneaking into people's rooms and she's in like the big open area, everyone's just like thrashing. Like the dancing is, I know it's supposed to be sensual, but like there's a lot of like, I don't know, thrusting maybe is a better word than thrashing, but I mean, it's like lots of contractions happening, and lots of head pops, spinal extensions. Like there's just a lot going on. And then also, nobody puts baby in the corner. Like, is that where this expression came from?
Yeah.
Because in my life, it's a Fall Out Boy song. Like, that's the reference. What else? Teenage dancing is resistance or rebellion. Also, the fact that this is set in the 60s and filmed in the 80s. Does it ever trip y'all up when you're watching a movie that's like more than 10 years old, but it's set further back in time, and you're having to like toggle back and forth between like, wait, what is this?
The jean shorts are so 80s. Like, yeah. And I'm like, nobody wore those in the 60s.
The Keds.
They did. And Keds.
They were, the Keds. Yeah.
This movie comes out in 87. It's set in, I think, 63. It's 24 years early. This movie is in our time set in 1999. You know, it doesn't, like, if we think about it in that terms, it's not that long ago. But as a 10-year-old in 1987, this was like the Jurassic era for me.
Yeah.
Like the
Like your
50s
parents'
and
age.
60s were like this time period. And here's the thing. If Baby is, 16 in this film, she's 40 when she's doing the voiceover narration or something like that. It's not, you know, she's still a young woman.
Is she 16 in the film?
Oh, yeah. It opens up some complications.
Oh,
Because
that
Johnny's
gives me the
25 and
ick.
she's 16.
Is she?
Yeah.
See, I thought they said she
I
was
thought
like,
she was going
there's
to
like a Mount
in the
Holyoke.
fall. Yeah.
Oh, was she? Okay,
18.
so maybe she 18?
Yeah.
Or was
Oh.
that her older sister?
No, I think she's going to Mount Holyoke. Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
right.
On the Mount
She's
Holyoke
okay.
in the fall. That was one of my favorite lines. Yeah.
She's still a teenager. Like,
Yes.
whether she's 16,
now
17,
old enough
18.
for Dane Cook to marry, essentially. So,
Yep.
from a strictly like narrative standpoint, we open up with this. One of the things I actually love is this voiceover to introduce us to. It was the summer of 1963, back when everyone still called me. Do you like this use of, because we start with this and then it just disappears.
Yeah, it doesn't wrap back around.
It's only in the very entrance and then we never see it. Does that work for you? Did you find that helpful? Do you like this as a narrative device to start introducing us to the film?
If it were carried out all the way, I think it maybe would have been more helpful. I guess it's stage setting, but there's a million different ways that you could do that. I do remember very clearly she says something about the JFK assassination hadn't happened yet. And she was about to join the Peace Corps. And that's when she was uncritically letting people call her baby. I don't know. What else do y'all remember about that first scene?
I mean, that was about it. We just get that in the car, right? And then we're off to the races. So, yeah, you typically expect like she'll interject throughout the rest of the film, but it's the only time we ever. I guess it just kind of sets the stage. And looking back on this, I keep wondering, okay, who is Baby Houseman in 1987? Who's the 40-year-old version of her looking back? Because obviously we're going to come back and ask if she and Johnny are still together, but don't answer that just yet. Because I'm kind of wondering how she's thinking back on her. She's clearly thinking about her life and reflecting, and we get the story through her eyes. So, you know, all right, let's start with it. Lauren, you brought this up earlier. This is really an explicitly Jewish film, wouldn't you say? I mean, and I didn't get that growing up in Western Kentucky. I'd never met anyone that was Jewish until I went to college. So, thoughts on like introducing to maybe the Jewish summer camp? I mean, is it something that you picked up on when you were watching it first, or is this a thing that you kind of learned later on?
I mean, I picked it up pretty quickly just by who the actors were, and the screen credits and the director's name, and I can't remember what they were anymore, but it seemed clear. But I mean, for a movie that came out in 87, I'm sure there was a lot of whitewashing anyway, and they didn't want to sell it as a Jewish, film, even though it really seems
it's
like
pretty
it was.
obviously Jewish, but not like saying it out loud.
I looked up who wrote Dirty Dancing. It was Eleanor Bergstein, who was born in the late 1930s, I believe in Brooklyn. And so just if you look at her biography, her like family dynamics kind of mirror Baby. She's had an older sister, that sort of thing. And so you just wonder how much of herself she put into the film, what it was like to be a teen Jewish girl in the early 60s. You're 15 years or so past World War II. People know about the Holocaust by now, but certainly the civil rights movement is at the forefront of the newspapers. And it's just interesting to think about how a young Jewish teen would have been like navigating that exact moment. So she's the writer was remembering what it was like.
Well, I remember that Eleanor Bernstein, and I watched even when I was young, I watched a interview with her about this film because it was so wildly popular. And she said that her nickname, when she was young, was Baby. She did the dirty dancing at the camp, in the Catskills. And then, she went back and interviewed for the movie some dance instructors from there. And so I found it fascinating that she's putting so much of herself in it. I also had to Google whether she put Frances Perkins, whether she based a lot of the, because it says, my name is Frances, the First Lady of the Cabinet. And I had never watched it critically as a scholar before. Frances Perkins is a big player in my own research. And so I found the parallels between Baby and Frances Perkins just like unbelievable. So I didn't look it up, but I have to think that Eleanor Bernstein used a lot of Frances Perkins as well, because Frances Perkins went to Mount Holyoke. Frances Perkins ended up majoring at Wharton School in sociology and economics, whereas Baby is, studying economics of third world countries, and just kind of the same progressive era type utopianism. The rich people have a duty to help the working class, and so which is kind of mirrored in Baby's own thought process as she's moving through the movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a film that is looking at that post-war exuberance and the deeply embedded family life that crossed race and class in the 50s and 60s. And I mean, I think that the resort, on one hand, it was a place where Jewish families could go and be with each other, but also I think it also speaks to like the anti-Semitism and racism that probably drove them to do that in the first place, because Jewish people are still excluded from public life in many ways. And again, the civil rights movement is happening all around. It's a subtext here. And yeah, so it's really interesting to think about like the fact that the writer and her life and how it got put into the film and what she's trying to say about post-war America.
So I thought about that too, Lauren. While I was watching it again the other day and today again.
Last week and the week before.
We should have a big watch party today.
3,000th time. But I did think about that. I even wrote that down in my notes, that the kind of the post-war activism part of it that I was trying to unpack with, because you know what Baby wants to do, but then you have what was his name, Neil or something, how he was going to do freedom rides, right? So I had written, I marked down in my notes that this kind of East Coast, and I may be like generalizing, but East Coast saviorism from Ivy League schools, this kind of East Coast, we've got to do our part, saviorism. And it struck me, I hadn't done the research on it or moved through, but you see these kinds of patterns in upper class, upper middle class, especially, educated upper middle class people, like jumping out. I don't want to say white saviorism out loud, but necessarily, because I don't know if that's what it was, but it struck me, and you saying it again, like that part of it struck me.
So I'm glad that you brought that up, Leah, because I almost feel like the writer put a lot of that in there, like really poured it on to be a little tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
Like I think it was almost meant to be like a humor thing. Like we're such do-gooders. We're good. Like I'm going to third world countries. I'm going to Mississippi.
Right.
Like, that
right.
sort of thing. And it's, I think she was trying to be funny with that, only because, it was sprinkled throughout, but when it came on, it was like she really laid it on thick.
Well, and maybe just making fun of herself and making fun of her class and education, that kind of thing is, oh, look at us. Here we go again,
Yeah, I wonder too, Lauren, I would be really interested in your take on the mother's character, because she doesn't speak. She is kept from all knowledge, right? The dad, like the patriarch, is the sort of, obviously he's the decision maker in the family, but he's also like all information runs through him. And so he doesn't want to tell his wife anything. But then in the very last scene, she jumps in and she's like, "Oh, I think she got those dance moves from me." And it's like she pops in with a little bit of humor, and that's all we ever get from her. But I really want to know what you think about that character.
Yeah, the mother's she's kind of like a static character, kind of a tropey Jewish mother character where she's like, "Oh, you girls, need to be looking for husbands, and like, why do you want to
stand up straight?"
It's very. I mean, I think maybe she's in there to kind of provide that messaging to the viewer, like this was what it. I mean, baby, the film is very feminist. I think it's feminist from the perspective of the 60s, and I think it's also feminist from the perspective of the 80s in terms of who is making it, what choices they made. I was on the other podcast where Jackie Antonovich and I talked about Thelma and Louise with you, Jason, and this movie is made right around the same time, and it's really interesting to think about. 80s feminism is producing this kind of cultural messaging where they're producing Thelma and Louise, they're producing Dirty Dancing, they're producing
Working
also
Girl.
Things like and then kind of in the early 90s shifting to things like Pretty Woman, and the film definitely trying to do a lot, and I think it succeeds in doing a lot, but I think it's really well done because there's a lot of threads that get pulled through, and especially as historians, when you watch this, like you're thinking about 80s history, you're thinking about 60s history, you're thinking about like how those two things like reflect now in 2023. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, this movie does so much. And, Leah, I know you really wanted to pull these threads out talking about class, which are just right there. When you're a 10-year-old, you're like, oh, bad guy, good guy, or that guy's a jerk or whatever. And, but it's just right there. And there's so much to pull out of it. Leah, did you have thoughts on the way it's represented here?
I do. I think that what stood out to me, partly because I study prostitution and morality and, early 20th century, what stood out to me is this idea that, working class women are somehow immoral and working class men are somehow immoral. And so it follows these tropes, but not in a tropey sense. It really tries to look at this class understanding of the world, even when Johnny and Baby are talking to each other on the trail, that after that one time where she tries to hide him from her father after her father put his arm around Robbie, and we know that Robbie is working class there, but we don't know his situation. His class is kind of ambiguous as far as, he's working there, but he's going to medical school. And so that's more ambiguous, but
Yale.
He's the one that knocks up Penny, and Penny is the one that's getting an abortion. And so there's this underlying current of addressing morality, addressing working class morality. Robbie to put off what he did, he says, she could have been with anybody. Whereas Baby, of course, is, from upper class. And so it follows that narrative of upper class girl falls in love with, the working class guy. I noticed another part of class that really struck me is when Baby is telling them that Johnny's not guilty of stealing, that it was the it was Schulemans. Is that Schulman?
I think Shoemakers.
Schumakers. And that she saw them at the other hotel, and her dad comes in and says, "Baby, you can't just go around accusing innocent people." Whereas Johnny wasn't provided that same innocence. And so I think there's a dynamic there that's a thread throughout the movie, that a certain class of people are considered innocent, whereas the working class is considered immoral. and automatically suspect. And which that part of it, of course, just fascinated me. Also, and then I'll say this part and leave it there, but part of my own research is the idea of slumming. And so I think Robbie says, "That's okay, baby. I went slumming too once." I'm talking about Penny, of course. And slumming was a huge phenomenon in the early 1900s, where wealthy people, middle and upper class people, would go into red light districts for their entertainment. And it was very voyeuristic. But it was to say, oh, I went slumming. I went and hung around those poor people, those working class people. And so that use of terminology in that same thread of those class divisions just fascinated me, and how that kind of transfers. I mean, looking at the history as a historian, I'm looking at it through the 1980 writing of it about the 1960s, but then there's that longer thread of the idea of slumming, the idea of immorality, especially with women, the idea of, working class women being sexually promiscuous. And so that's what really stood out to me.
I love that the shoemakers were these
I know.
thieves. That was incredible.
They're going around America like knocking places over, and she can barely stand.
And they have her typecast as this chatty little old lady who's like probably out to lunch, doesn't know what she's doing, and meanwhile
she took dance lessons from George Burns. And I mean, George Burns was ancient when I was little, but I remember him being on TV, right? And so that was hilarious to me.
Was it any surprise that Robbie's giving away copies of The Fountainhead?
Oh my God.
Oh.
Yeah.
No.
Some people matter, some people don't.
He was an grandstand for sure.
But see, it's little slips like that in the narrative that I think are supposed to be humorous, right? That somebody in, or not children, but adults in the 80s would look at and understand that she's being a little tongue in cheek, and she's setting up a character for you in advance.
So I know this isn't my podcast, but I am going to ask a question. What do y'all think about the commentary on Reaganomics? Like this movie as commentary of, the Reagan era.
Well, I mean, Robbie says it, right? He says some people matter and some people don't.
Yeah.
I mean, that feels very, this is a very pointed filmmaking. It's wrapped up in a romantic, sexy film about dancing and young love. And it is hammering away at some real social issues. Watching this movie again today, I'm like, holy shit, this film's got some real teeth to it. And I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's hammering away at Reagan, the conservatism, everything. So, I mean,
Elmac can probably speak more to this too, is, the abortion discussions in the 1980s, right? With Reagan.
Did we jump into the abortion stuff? Because I kind of felt like that was really the pin, like where this whole thing is going to.
It's the premise of the movie.
Yeah, it really is.
It's the reason that she's dancing.
I can tell you, I wanted to say this because I remember when I was 10, and I'm turning this over to you guys. I remember as a 10-year-old boy watching this film, 10, 11, 12-year-old boy. I remember quite literally, and I remember quite clearly being bewildered when he said, "She's knocked up, baby." I had no idea what that meant as a kid, and probably good for a child. I would to understand what this movie. I was not the target audience in 1987, but this abortion, the whole film turns on this sequence here. So, Elmac, do you want to jump in and talk about abortion? Go.
And I want Leah and Lauren to jump in and interrupt me too, but I have a ton of thoughts about this. So like in 1963, when this film is set, this is the period, just before birth control is legalized. Birth control has essentially been legal since the 1930s, through your physician. So somebody like baby's father is able to distribute birth control to his patients. And also, this is the period where there's this very interesting dichotomy going on where there is an increasing crackdown on illegal abortion, but there are also physicians who risk their careers to perform them. And we are zooming toward 1973. American opinion in the 60s on abortion is there's consensus that abortion is a necessary part of reproductive life. And that's borne out in the early 70s when you look at the Gallup polls that get taken around Roe v. Wade. And so I think actually it's quite an accurate portrayal. I mean, they're very scared that, I mean, she's dying in the bed of sepsis because they know that the cops, that they will crack down. They will arrest the person who, she tried to do it herself. Am I remembering that?
No, there's like a fly-by-night doctor.
Yeah, it was a fly-by-night
right.
doctor. Yeah.
He's
That's
only
right.
going to be
So
here
it's
Thursday.
Dirty
He's
knife and a
leaving.
folding table.
It's the back alley trope. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was self-induced or not, but yeah, that makes total sense because there was this huge crackdown across the nation on those kinds of people who perform those kinds of abortions, and in response, you get groups like Jane in Chicago and that sort of thing. You have abortion wards that are filled with women who are septic from either self-induced or botched abortions in this period, and so you're really at this like complete turning point in how Americans thought about reproductive rights in that period. And so I think the film does a really good job kind of like picking up on all of those different threads. The doctor, baby's dad just comes in and like he does what he needs to do to save the patient, right? And so I think it's a commentary on the doctors that did risk their career to perform abortions. I also Leah, you pointed this out, and this is such a good point. Like in the 80s, we're getting that ramping up of anti-abortion activism. By that point, we've really cemented like the linkage between the Catholic and evangelical wings who are coming together to start really like hammering away at Roe. And so I think that the filmmakers are thinking about those things and they're watching what's happening in real time in the Reagan era, and they're thinking back to like, wow, what's different now than what was different than the 60s? What are the continuities, but what's also very different?
Well, and what stood out to me, especially about that, and why I brought up the question was when Baby and Penny are getting ready and putting Baby's dress on, and Penny starts crying and tells Baby, I don't know what they told you, but I don't sleep around. And so there's an underlying message too that working class women, even though in the film the working class woman is the one that gets pregnant and has the abortion, that it's trying to kind of reverse that idea, that thought that working class women are inherently promiscuous, are inherently immoral. And then of course that has the longer thread that goes back to the Frances Perkins days of women like Frances Perkins who are trying to get the minimum wage for women to keep them out of prostitution. Frances Perkins, even like many women of Frances Perkins' time, they work at YMCAs or other organizations to escort working class women from like the trains to boarding houses or the trains to YMCAs so that they don't get snatched up by, white slavers. And so that good working class girls turn into bad girls or fallen women. And so I think but there's that narrative of seduction that comes out of the early 20th century too, that, if girls can't fall for guys' seduction methods, because if you do, then like Robbie, you can leave, you can walk away, you can still go to medical school, but the woman will forever be fallen. And so I think that part of it does a really good job of trying to address both class and morality with that.
Yeah. And as an adult rewatching the film, I was really struck by the fact that Baby's dad does not he doesn't go in there and moralize. I think that's what makes the film in that moment feminist, because they're just portraying, look, these institutionalized social circumstances have brought us to this point, but then you're not going to hear a sermon from the doctor. You're not hearing and that was not obviously necessarily the case. I mean, there were plenty of moralizing doctors who, made their patients feel terrible as they're prescribing birth control or, helping them get an abortion. And so, I think it was a very deliberate choice to have the dad not, as a physician, not say anything mean to Penny.
And it's in the script that he goes back and checks on her too. Right? Like there's another scene where baby, I guess, comes to talk to Penny and she's like, "Oh, you just missed your dad. Like he did a follow-up appointment with me." But Leah, that scene that you were talking about where Penny is helping baby get dressed, I wish that, and this is just me, my brain is having to fill in these gaps because it wasn't written in, but I wish that the writers would have included baby's thoughts on that, because she doesn't react at all. She's just silent and she doesn't interject and say, "No, I never thought that about you," or, "Oh, okay." Like you just get nothing from her. And I would have liked to see that, but that's okay. Maybe we can, maybe that silence is so that the viewer can, like I did, fill in their own thoughts.
Can I ask then about how baby's dad, we're talking about him not judging Penny, but his reactions and relationship to Johnny as he comes out of the building. Johnny goes to thank him, but Penny's dad obviously thinking that Johnny is responsible for both impregnating her, but also setting her up with a hack doctor. Can we speak to that as far as like maybe his because he has different relationship to Penny versus Johnny, right?
Well, I think he has a different relationship to Penny versus working class people in general, because if you remember when he was leaving, he didn't shake Johnny's hand. When he was leaving, he turns to baby and says, "You'll have nothing to do with these people or those people." And so I think it's more about, taking his work as a doctor seriously, but then there's that narrative or that trope of the father is supposed to be the protector of his family, especially his girls, and girls are supposed to leave the protection of their father for the protection of a husband. And if they go out into the world not living with their father or not having a husband, then they're women adrift. So I think we see, or there's parts of it, at the end, it comes about where he apologizes to Johnny. But I think what we're seeing is kind of this internal struggle of being a doctor, being this progressive, because, even baby says, "You lied to me too," or "You let me down too," because she believed, all of this progressive talk from her father, that everybody was equal, that everybody deserved a chance. And when they're leaving, he turns to her and says, "Don't have anything to do with those people." And so I think we're seeing his internal struggle of his politics and his words or his politics and his practice versus his words.
One thing I thought of too about the abortion scene, this as a whole, the film is a coming of age film, and it's a film about emergent sexuality. It's about baby finding, as a young woman, her sexuality. And I think it's a commentary, though, on in this period, and I would argue in the 80s when the film was made, that there's always, it's like that phrase in feminism, pleasure and danger. Like, your women who embrace their sexuality, who are sexual, are always walking that line where it can ruin your life, or it can literally kill you to be sexual.
So I'm gonna just jump in and piggyback on that. So I found it fascinating that, Jason, I mean, I know you're coming from a male point of view, a 10-year-old at the time, but I always remember.
How dare you use my point of view and thoughts against me?
10-year-old male point.
But I always remember as a girl.
Are you talking about then or now? Because those points of view are actually quite similar, as I've been told.
But then, because I was the same age, I mean, you and I are the same age.
No, you're
so
older.
I was the same. Oh, shut up! Maybe flip you off on your own podcast. But I remember understanding what Penny was, what was happening. I don't know that I had the word abortion. I think I did, because it was such a huge topic of conversation in church, in school. In the 5th grade, we had to sit through that period movie, where they tell all the 5th grade girls, this is what's happening to your body. And, and if you don't practice abstinence, you could die. But even in church and school, in homes, if our parents who listen to Reagan talk about, welfare queens and abortion and shake hands with Jerry Falwell, abortion and pregnancy outside of marriage and promiscuous behavior and moral girls and, here's your uterus and this is what happens, and we'll know you're pregnant if you don't have your period. And I mean, the period movie when we were in the 8th grade was a scary thing, and they used it to promote abstinence in the 80s. And so, I don't ever have a memory of not knowing what happened to Penny and not knowing why she got knocked up.
That scene, too, is not really clear. So when she's going to the refrigerator with, what is the kid's name? Is she with Neil in that scene?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
They're sneaking around trying to find a snack in the refrigerator. And then she hears Penny crying and she's immediately like, okay, cover. Let's get out of here. And then she goes and gets, what is the friend's name? The cousin.
I don't remember.
Johnny's cousin.
Johnny's cousin.
Anyways, she gets Johnny's cousin.
He doesn't get a girlfriend, so he doesn't get a name.
Not a main character. She gets Johnny's cousin. Johnny's cousin gets Johnny, and then they all run back. But on the way back, he's like, he knows based off of the limited evidence that Baby would have had to give him, that all he knows is like she's sitting and shaking and crying on the kitchen floor. But somehow he knows she's pregnant. And so that's just not clear. Like, I guess they just take a lot of liberties to throw that out there.
For me,
Billy.
Yeah,
Billy.
For me, the scene was always, they knew that she was pregnant. And so the scare under the table or wherever she was, or not the scare, but the crying, I thought that was always because she had witnessed Robbie and Baby's sister out on the golf course.
Oh, okay.
And that's where she witnessed, or she tried to ask Robbie for the money, and he left with Baby's sister, or some kind of interaction that we don't know that happened off camera. But that it was implied when they went back and she was crying that she had asked him for the money and he said no. Okay. That stood out to me too, just because of the power that men have to walk away and no responsibility for pregnancy.
I like that it's the one shot that she has to get an abortion. She can't get it because she's working.
Yeah.
It's that off limits to her.
Elmac was just hinting at this, and I want to ask you this. This film comes out in 1987, Reagan administration. Where does AIDS play into this film? Because I feel the shadow of AIDS. Thinking back on this, we're talking about the danger of sexuality. It's obviously never spoken of in the film because it's set in 1963. But, the director, Emil Ardolini, actually died 6 years later of AIDS in 1993. A lot of people, I know that it hit dance communities hard. It was really difficult, and the Reagan administration famously did jack squat about it. Do you see AIDS at all, or am I projecting here?
I agree. I think it's because it's a nostalgic look back at 60s life from the vantage point of the mid 80s, the height of the Reagan era. I think that there is a nostalgia there for, it's kind of like in Forrest Gump, where you follow along with the story of Jenny, and she's like wild and crazy in the 60s and 70s and on coke and doing all this, having all this sex. And then that promiscuity comes back to bite her because she gets AIDS and dies, and so I do think that there is that shadow. Absolute. I mean, they couldn't have not been thinking about that when they're making a movie about, not necessarily even about Baby and Johnny. It's about like the rampant hookups that took place at these kinds of resorts or with, over the summer with staff.
Summer loving happened so fast.
That's right.
And in like nightclub communities too, Jason, like you said. I don't know. I wonder if that is consciously not there, because it sounds like we've all four decided that this is a political film for sure. But I wonder if that might have been part of the like whitewashing for mass audiences. Like, we're not going to talk about AIDS in the same way we're not going to say these Jewish people are Jewish, right? There's no reference to that at all.
I think that's spot on, because I mean, if you look at all the dance scenes, it's all heterosexual couples. There is no interracial dancing. The Black men are with Black women. Cuban men are with Cuban women. Other Latinos are with Latinas. And white people are with white people. And so there is no kind of interracial mixing there. There's just the larger class discussion. But I think that's, spot on.
I want to move on from the heavy talk for a second and ask you guys about the soundtrack.
Why aren't we listening to it right now? Why is it not playing in the background?
So we were all talking before, and I think every one of us listened to the soundtrack separately of watching the film. And I was listening to it today going, God, why don't I listen to the soundtrack more? I remember listening to it. Leah, you said you had it on tape. Lauren danced her way to a copy of it. We all had this.
I know.
Oh my gosh, right? Well, Lauren's cooler than the rest of us.
I know.
Although I
don't know what happened to it. I think my mom threw it away.
What?
It's really sad. I don't know where it went. Yeah, I haven't seen it in years, so she probably.
You know what? This is the first time I've got beef with someone's mom, so I'm sorry, but it's on. How dare she? All right, hit me with your favorite song from the soundtrack. You get one song on this soundtrack. You got to hit me. I'm making you choose one favorite song, and we're going to exclude "Time of Our Life" because that's different.
No,
because
no, you can't.
It's the best one.
Right. Well, I know
we all vote
easy,
for that.
Though it's too synonymous with the film. It's too perfect. And of course, the big thing I remember back in the day is like, this song was written for the movie, which is set 24 years ago, and this song was out so often you could set your clock by it. I mean, it was like every 5 minutes, and I swear to God, I was making chili today, and I was like doing the dance, the Johnny Castle dance. And like the dog was like, "Are we going outside? Do you have to pee?" I was like, "Maybe."
What's the song that they're dancing to when they're practicing? Is it "Be My Baby"?
Be My Baby, yeah.
Be My Baby by the Ronettes.
Yeah, and when he sings it to her, I like that.
What about Hungry Eyes?
Hungry Eyes is
Eric Carmen. Yeah. Oh God, that's one where the montage. You get this great dancing montage. And it's got like him, and it's got Penny like dancing, and like the scene where like I was like where the montage where the two were like Baby and Penny are dancing, and Johnny's sitting in the floor with this like kind of sitting crisscross, and he's kind of drumming on the floor and so forth while they're doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This movie's got good montage. Like real. This is
God,
Rocky level montage.
I can totally picture Patrick Swayze doing that like right now in my head.
Right.
That isolated image, though, you could so easily like transfer that to like Patrick Swayze Ghost. Like it's that he's doing the same thing.
We have to hold off on Patrick Swayze.
God rest his soul.
We gotta.
So
y'all don't even know how much I love Patrick Swayze. I have a thing called Swayze-thon every year. Go on.
Do y'all know that there's a Dirty Dancing soundtrack too? Did you have both of them? Because I had both of them.
And in fact, These Arms of Mine, which is the scene when they do the adult thing, is actually the same song that Patrick Swayze gets with in Roadhouse, another classic romance film. maybe even more political, because how dare you kill Sam Elliott? Yeah, how does These Arms of Mine not make it into the original soundtrack, the one? Because that's a song.
Can I interject here real quick? Not to get us off the song thing, because we'll come right back to that. But I'm reading the Wikipedia for Jennifer Grey, and she and Patrick Swayze are in Red Dawn.
Yeah, 3 years earlier.
That's where they first acted together.
Coming to a live pod near you.
And they hated each other.
I'll be there.
Yeah, that's right. Lawrence could be there.
All
They
this
hated each
lore.
other.
Why? I don't know any of this.
Okay.
Wow, I did not know that.
Disqualified to be here.
Oh.
So the actors did not like each other?
Okay. Let me give so people who are listening, let me give the quick backstory. Yeah. So Red Dawn comes out in 1984, and I know this because I've seen this movie 100 million times. Grey and Swayze famously did not like each other during the film, but sometimes when you don't like each other, you get awesome chemistry. And Artolini was the director had actually worked on Flashdance and was very adamant about having actors who could actually dance, because the problem with Flashdance is they used people at times who they interjected dancers in for the people, and you could tell. So it needed people who could tell. And Swayze is actually one of the great dancers in film history. He's a classically trained dancer, and he actually had to kind of dumb down his dancing in this film. I told you guys I love this movie.
Yeah, he turned it into convulsing rather than dancing.
Okay, first of all, how dare you? That man is a legend.
We saw the same movie, man. That's what he's doing.
You don't see Dirty Dancing, you feel Dirty Dancing. Secondly, but anyway, yeah. So he had to talk Jennifer Grey and said, "Okay, I know we didn't get along, but we can work this out." And at first, it was good, and then they went back to hating each other. And the filmmakers actually had to pull out test footage from the casting auditions to like, look, you guys are great together. Stop your beef. And eventually,
what was it
got
over?
on.
Wow.
They did, but in Patrick Swayze's memoir that he publishes afterwards, he talks about how he made fun of her, that she was a crybaby, that they had to do all these takes, and he got so frustrated with her that she would be, she would either cry if you criticized her, or she was silly, and they had to, redo these takes. So you could tell that there was still this, frustration there.
Well, one of those scenes is actually in the film.
Yeah. She's laughing and he's like being real sensual.
That's actually an outtake that they put into the movie. But their chemistry is phenomenal.
So good.
I mean, name another Patrick Swayze coupling, aside from Sam Elliott, that is better than with Jennifer Grey.
I mean, we said Ghost a second ago.
I don't want to talk about Ghost. It makes me cry.
Okay. But I mean, he does have good chemistry with Demi Moore. Like that's, you asked for a comparison.
But I think having seen both, like I do think there's something more there with Jennifer Grey. Like, I mean, I think that Demi Moore I think she was great in that film. That is a sad film, but oh yeah, Lee, like it's like that enemies to lovers thing. Like you just wonder maybe what was going on behind the scenes.
All right, back to the soundtrack. I got a couple more questions here. All right, Overload. When he
love that song.
I love that song. It's so good.
Yeah, that's a good song.
Right? And then here you go. Here's my low-key favorite. And I can't listen to it all the time. In the Still of the Night. 5 Satins.
Oh, I love that.
I love
my
that.
My friends. I fucking love doo-wop. Like, I remember in the 80s, you would get cassettes. And
Yes.
like 50s and stuff like that. And my stepdad, God bless him, would have all these cassettes of like doo-wop hits. And I grew up listening to like the 5 Satins and all these dudes. And that was like, I mean, a classic. I remember growing up in Louisiana, listening to that. It was like, oh, man.
My dad had the same. There's another song from the movie, Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow? I used to sing that song at the top of my lungs. I had no idea what I was talking about.
Yeah,
every song in this soundtrack is as they could say, banger. Everything is so good. All right, now let's talk about Time of Our Life. Is I've Had the Time of My Life the greatest song ever made?
That's a stretch, but it's the greatest one, I think, on the soundtrack.
It's unquestionably, right?
I mean, if it comes on the radio, I don't change the channel. Like, let's put it that way.
Well, as somebody who's seen Dirty Dancing a million times, when I hear it, I can, that one part of the scene where he just does this to her face after they dance, and to sing to her, What's the part that he says? And I owe it all to you. I owe it all to you.
Owe it all to you.
I think I do that every single time the song comes on. I scrunch up my nose and do the scene.
You're doing it now. You're doing this nose scrunchy thing. Everyone nose crunch. Now we look like feral rabbits.
I just see the lift. Like that's all I can see.
All right, I'm gonna put a whole thing out there. Next conference, anybody who wants to do the lift, just let me know. I'll do the lift. Just run up to me. Just say, Jay, lift time. Put baby in a corner.
With no notice. Just
start randomly running at me. Right?
Both come crashing to the ground. Like they just go.
I would literally just fall over. Like,
well, we got a conference next month. We got you can do
it. You took dance like for a long time. You can do the lift.
We didn't talk about that. I also took dance. So like in West Palm Beach, I'm 22 years old.
Oh my goodness.
I'm incredibly bad with women. Some things don't change. And I'm like, you know what I need to do? Salsa
dancing.
Lessons. Yeah. I take salsa
Become
lessons.
Patrick Swayze.
Yeah. And I'm like, so I start showing up at like all the Latin clubs. I'm like the white dude, like the gringo down there. And I swear to God, it was one of the best decisions I've ever made because I can't dance at all. And I'm incredibly goofy. But people were like, all I want to do is dance. I'm like, I know the moves. I can do the thing. So I can still do the salsa. And also we did the thing. Were you guys around for like 1998, the swing dance revival?
Yes.
Do you guys remember that?
I totally participated.
Yeah.
As did I.
It was, you could take like classes at
I went to the club. So you take classes like for a couple of hours. And then they shut the classes down and they start the club music. Yeah.
Those bands are still going. Like Cherry Poppin' Daddies is still, and Big Bad Voodoo Daddy, they are still on tour to this day. All right. I got a couple other things.
My elementary school did square dancing in 1998. That's what I was doing. I don't know about swing dancing. That devilish stuff wouldn't have been allowed in South Mississippi.
You and I grew up in similar places. Did you learn to do two-step when you were a kid?
Yeah, yeah.
I did.
So, it's right. Leah, you did too, right?
Yeah.
Because Cajuns do two-step. Mm-hmm. So I grew up doing Cajun two-step.
Mm-hmm. Zydeco. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's the lyric? Grab a two-step partner in a Cajun beat when it lifts you up.
God. Mary Chapin Carpenter.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Be still my beating heart. Oh my God. I still have the biggest crush on her. I follow her on Instagram with her golden retrievers.
She's on Instagram.
Oh yes, she is. And she's lovely. Right now.
I mean, her Come On album, I like put that, my kids think I'm nuts. I
feel like we all became best friends right now because that Come On, okay. The song Quittin' Time is the saddest song, and it's so good.
So sad.
Do you know the song? Okay, three of us know. Lauren Shepherd, do you know the song Quittin' Time?
Sing it for me. Okay. I'm deep into Mary Chapin Carpenter's
you really?
Instagram.
You pretend and I pretend everything is fine.
Yeah.
And
keep going.
We should be at an end. It's so hard admitting when it's quitting time. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Like, I'm hoping that's enough. Okay, I hope that was enough deep.
That was a really good
cultural. I'm such a bad singer, Lauren. I'm so sorry. But what I'm hoping for, like our producer Fletcher Powell says, we can only bring a song in on the podcast if we critically interrogate the song. So as scholars, we have all critically interrogated Quitting Time by Mary Chapin Carpenter on the great album Come On, Come On.
Correct. I was trying to find a picture of me in my tutu and I couldn't find one.
Oh my gosh. I cannot believe I just sang on this podcast for the first time.
I think I opened it up. I sang earlier.
Okay. Yeah, but do you guys have what we refer to as talent? I'm like,
we'll all be singing by the end of the night.
Just keep drinking, girls. What about that'll be the new podcast. Just keep drinking. Do you I'll throw the girls in. Next time I have you guys, when I had the 4 dudes on that did Kingdom of Heaven, I'll call them the girls from here on out, and that'll be fun. love that.
Well, you gave us nicknames when we started.
I did. Everyone's going to get a nickname, and I'm going to need a flow chart at the end of all of this. So, all right. Favorite scene from Dirty Dancing. What do you got?
Can I go back to that scene from a second ago, where they're just dancing together and the song's playing, and I guess Neil walks in again and he's like, "Make sure you get your money's worth out of this."
Right.
Oh my God, Neil's such a tool.
Yeah,
that guy's a
like
tool. Yeah. El Mac, what you got? You got a favorite scene?
Actually, I think one of the cutest, funniest scenes is like when they do that first performance and she kind of like forgets what she's supposed to be doing and she does that. And I always laugh so hard at that scene.
So amazing. Yeah.
That is followed closely by when they're in I guess it's like after they've done the adult activities and they're in the dance studio together and they're like, crawling across the floor. And I remember watching that as probably like, age 11, like I said.
The baby.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa. Yeah. Yeah. And Swayze's like, beow, beow, beow.
Yep.
Right? Yeah. That one.
Yep.
I got to stop singing. I can't help it now. I guess the answer is 2 Angry Orchard crisp apples. That's all it takes.
She turns his instructions around on him too.
That's dangerous.
Dude, it's like drinking Kool-Aid and then you're
delicious.
Drunk. Then you're deciding, I'm going to write a Substack tonight. No.
Then you're singing on a podcast.
Right.
My apologies to Mary Chapin Carpenter. Leah, what you got?
Not that I am not completely smitten with the relationship of Baby and Johnny, but I think one of my favorite scenes is still just the bonding between Penny and Baby when she's getting ready, because Baby's just helping out or doing what she thinks is right, and Penny finally has kind of a different scene, a different moment where she's not trying to be all hard, and then she's kind of vulnerable in that moment, and so there's this bonding between the two of them. I think that's
and she's kind of like the older sister, I think, that Baby needed and didn't have.
Yeah. It's an amazing thing, you talk about that, because so much of our conversation tonight has revolved around Penny. I mean, obviously it's been a lot about Baby and Johnny, but Penny is really, really the catalyst that makes a lot of this film go. You see a lot of this film, you see her character arc change as she kind of softens or allows herself to open up. She's also the voice of reason, where she's like, when Baby leaves the room and she looks at Johnny, she's like, she just knows immediately. She's like, you got to stop. What are you doing? And she's right.
Mm-hmm. She's an endearing character, even from the beginning when she's trying to be cold. Mm-hmm. Because think about when you first see Penny, it's her dancing with Johnny, and she's just phenomenal.
And that really thick accent that she's okay, the kind of New York accent.
She's from Nashville originally. Yeah. She's so good. Oh my gosh, she was married to Richard Marx.
No, I didn't know that.
Yes. They got married in 1989.
She would have towered over him. I mean, she was like so tall and statuesque. Those legs.
There will be no Richard Marx slander on this podcast.
Sorry. I mean, I love Richard Marx. I will see.
You were right there waiting for him. Oh my gosh, Lauren Shepherd, do you not know Richard Marx?
No, but it sounds like Richard Marx knew what he had.
Oh my God. Well, I think all of his stuff was like before he met her, because like he's got one of the great breakup songs. He's a singer from the 80s. Mm-hmm. And one of the great breakup songs ever is Should Have Known Better. Do you guys know this song?
Sing it.
Oh my God.
Let's hear it.
Do you want me to sing another song? Lauren, you don't want that to happen. Should have known better than to fall in love with you. Now love is just a pain. What is it? Shady Memory? Mm-hmm. Something like that. It's so good. It's such an angry song. It's on every playlist I have, especially at the gym.
Okay, I'm going to leave this tab open so I can listen to it later.
We're making a Lauren Shepherd, Mary Chapin Carpenter, Richard Marx soundtrack.
But no. Hold on. Before we move on from this, I want to say Baby is a super endearing character. Like when you see her dance for the first time, you're just blown away by her incredible talent. But then even the next scene where she's like packing up her bag and all of the women are wearing wigs for some reason that's never explained. But baby comes up to her and says, she's like, I just admire you. And so like that transfers like all of your attention onto her as like something to be admired. And, you know, of course she's being cold and distant and like protecting herself, like, you little rich girl, you don't know about my life. But there's a lot to love about Penny's character.
Yeah, I love Penny's character. And that's another one of my favorite scenes where, you know, when baby was like, you know, you used to be a rockette and I envy you. And she was like, ugh. You know, it's like, it's like this kind of, just like you said, you don't know anything about my life and you're so naive. You're a child, you know, you have no idea. I had to leave home at 16 because my parents.
Being a rockette was work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, Penny's hands down my favorite character of the movie.
Can I tell you guys my favorite bit of acting in the entire film is actually when Johnny looks at Baby. They're trying to say that Baby can step in for Penny. And there's this very subtle thing that Jennifer Grey does with her face. When Johnny says, see, she can't do it. She just said she can't do it. And if you go back and watch, Jennifer Grey does the slightest little thing with her face. It's ever so subtle. Like,
it's an F-U.
Yeah.
Oh, it's such an F-U. I can too. I will show you if it kills me. It is fucking brilliant. I thought, oh, it's so good. If you watch it, it is just the slightest little twist of her. And you can
I gotta
see
watch out for this now because I don't think. I mean, I'm sure I can't remember this.
It's
her
so
eyes
subtle.
Narrow. Yeah, her eyes narrow.
The camera holds on her face for a couple of seconds.
Yeah, and you can just tell she's like, okay, motherfucker, I got this.
Maybe that was a scene of like her talking to Swayze that was an outtake. And
Yeah.
like, this is a gym.
Gosh.
We got to put this here.
There's definitely something to it.
Yeah.
Okay, here's our big question tonight. Are Baby and Johnny still together?
Wait, I'm sorry. Can we get some clarification on this question? Like, are the characters still together in like a sequel or like?
No. Are they? No, this is obviously what happened in real life. And are they still together right now today? They got together.
Patrick Swayze is not dead.
The character never dies. Let's assume that Johnny Castle and Penny and Baby Houseman are still alive in 2023. This would have been many years later. Let's say in 1987, are they still together? They'd be 40 and say 46 respectively. Are they still together as of Baby Dirty Dancing?
They would have been no. I'm gonna say they like it would have been written as like, you know, star-crossed lovers should have been together, but fate intervened and like he was killed in a car accident or something. Like I feel like that's what would have happened.
Much more polite than Leah is going to say.
And she never remarries because she's like faithful to him.
Okay.
That's a story.
All right, Leah?
So I thought about this before we got on this podcast because I know
I was going to ask.
I really disappointed you with saying that Edward and
Vivian
were no longer together. But I kind of think that Baby, I would like to think that Baby and Johnny are still together. You know, Baby being the naive, you know, utopian young woman she was. And now I don't think that her dad would have liked that he was in the house painters union. So I think maybe he helped set him up with something else that could sustain them a little bit more. But I would like to think that they were still together.
Lauren?
I don't know. I feel like their class differences in 1963 were too much to overcome. And maybe even the Jewish.
The Jewish, non-Jewish. I didn't consider that. Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think that voiceover that never kind of comes back, maybe that's like the clue that like,
oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, it was just this fleeting moment where my life shifted. And then I went off to Mount Holyoke and like did my like upper class Jewish girl thing, you know,
because it was summer loving, unlike in Greece.
Yeah,
where they see each other again in high school.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they're happy for now at the end of the movie, but then not necessary. I think in if that was real life, I think it would be a very difficult thing to overcome.
All three of you disappoint me. Love is love. They last forever.
Because we
they
killed
die
Johnny.
in one another's arms.
I killed Johnny.
Yes.
In 2022,
it's the Notebook.
They not even Notebook, because they break up for a while. She's like with some other person. He writes her every day for a year.
I'm trying to think of other films that have this same like rich girl, poor guy plot line, and they fall in love over some concentrated amount of time. And how did they end? And the Titanic is the same thing. Jack dies. Rose lets him die.
Did you guys see the meme I posted on Instagram on that? How she's like, I slept with a homeless man and watched him drown.
Oh, no.
I sent that to my mother-in-law. She thought it was hilarious.
All right. Here's your big question. Is Dirty Dancing a history movie?
I think so, yes.
It's political history.
Class history.
Gender history. Religious history. With the fact that it's a labor history. Who gets time? And this is the thing I've been asking you earlier. Like this whole thing, this idea that in the summers you could go and take off for like weeks at a time and go to.
You can
what
if you're
a
wealthy.
lost thing that is, right?
Yeah.
Well, no, Jewish summer camps are still big now. I mean, I don't know if their whole family, but like kids for sure still go to Jewish summer camps.
It's second wave feminism movie for sure.
This is like one of the low key, this is one of the sneaky historical films I can think of. It is a sneaky good historical film. All right. That said, it's been the time of my life. I've been waiting for that to say that all day long. All I ask is that we start to think about what we're doing next, because this was too much fun. Leah, Lauren, associated puppies in the background and so forth. Thank you.
He finally came. He went and my 80-pound lab is sleeping right next to him. He was the one that was kept opening pushing open the door, and then he was walking around. Sorry.
I'm so happy, guys. I'm so happy we could do this. I wanted to do this movie with you guys for the longest time, and we had to push it back a couple times. So thank you for making the time to
thank
do this
you
tonight.
for inviting us to do it.
Absolutely.
You guys are the coolest. I swear, I'm not making up when I said I wanted 3 people to talk to you on this, and I literally got my top 3. I'm not kidding. I went Leah, Lauren, and Lauren. I am not kidding. So thank you.
We
all
can go on
for,
tour. We're the else.
Yeah. Actually, hold on just a second. I'm taking a picture of the screen here. Hold on.
We should do a live action.
Oh yeah.
We should do live action, and you should actually catch us all in the air.
Yeah.
Type and you can pick this up. Start lifting.
We actually have a thing. Okay, we'll do this. Oh, Denver it is. All right. So
are you going to lift Kathleen Ballou in the air? Is she aware of this?
I have not discussed this with Kathleen. Kathleen was kind enough to agree to be on the thing. And,
this is an Easter egg for anyone who listened 90 minutes through to this.
Right.
I
will tell you a story about this off air in just a moment. So, all right, I'm going to hit pause. Everybody say good night, and then I'll hit pause.
Good night, everyone.
And that's a wrap here at the Historians of the Movies podcast. Thank you so much to our holy trinity of guests today, Leah Lagrone, Lauren MacIvor Thompson, and Lauren Lassabe Shepherd. Thank you so much for being here. It is so awesome to hang out with you guys. This was just an absolute blast. Thank you so much to our intrepid producer, Fletcher Powell, for being here. You can find him on Twitter and elsewhere at Fletcher_Powell on X, Twitter. I don't know what the hell it is. Blue Sky, more importantly. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I hope you're listening to the soundtrack right now or next as you're driving wherever it is you are. If you like the pod, please continue to listen. Please continue to share. Please, if you will, leave comments, good ones, on Apple iTunes and Spotify. That helps to get us some more notice. Tell your friends about us and keep listening in. Keep sharing this. And thank you so much for being part of this Historians of the Movies community. It's been an absolute blast. If you are going to be in Denver, please show up to Windcoop Brewery, November 11th at 6 p.m. Kathleen Ballou and I are going to be doing a live version of the podcast. We're talking about Red Dawn in Denver, live to an audience. It's going to be absolutely amazing. So hopefully we can see you guys there. In the meantime, ciao for now. Bye.